All right, our meeting of the Keep Hubbardston Beautiful Committee is officially beginning at 7:04 p.m. on Monday, May 2nd. My name is Laura Foley and I'm the chair of the committee. And joining me is committee member Sarah McMaster. Hi, Sarah. Well, we do have an agenda to follow, and the first order of business is to see if you, Sarah, have been sworn in by Laurie Reed.
I have not. That is definitely still something I need to do. And I will ask about the conflict of interest training because I serve on the cultural council and I did do it recently. So I may that at least I might be okay.
I think you're all set. I still
Yeah.
need to take that training. I took it years ago when I was on a different committee. I'm sure things have changed since then, so I have to re-up that.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that takes care of that. Next on the agenda is our state of finances. So I am going to move my screen here so it doesn't look like I'm gazing off into the distance. I went to the select board meeting last Monday, to defend funding for Keep Hubbardston Beautiful. If you don't know, or for the edification of any viewers, the Keep Hubbardston Beautiful Committee had put forth an application for ARPA funds, but was denied based on a vote from the select board. And their reasoning was that fundraising is not that hard to do and that other towns don't typically fund these kinds of things. So, and also the ARPA funds were more designed to help businesses. Well, subsequent meetings and voting were a little bit different from that. They did vote in some funds for another community service organization. So when it was time to defend the funding Keep Hubbardston Beautiful, I pointed out that the other organization who got funding, why didn't we? But I think the biggest thing that got the funding ultimately was that I actually sat down and prepared a budget, which you can see here. So rather than just say, I need X amount of dollars and I'll backfill that with expenses, I listed the expenses and they were able to provisionally grant the Keep Hubbardston Beautiful Committee $8,000. I say provisionally because it is based on a review by our town administrator, Ryan McLean, who I understand has returned from the service and will be rejoining the town. But going down here, these are the big things to focus on, how much things will cost overall. I had put together a high-end budget with the idea that everything is funded. This is how much I would need to do all of the things I wanted to do. I say all of the things, but I did make a concession to some of the select board of removing all of the giveaways that I had put in there. So those are out of the budget, but this budget here would be, as you see there, the high end. And it was actually not a little bit good, but it was interesting that the dumpster was late on the townwide cleanup, because I was able to spin that into, if we were a paying customer, this would not have happened. So that's where the high end includes the dumpster rental at an estimated $500. And then the low end is really basic stuff, only updating the sign sticker with the date, not spending money on custom safety t-shirts. And you can see that the amounts of things are typically lower, and that is the really low end. If we do get that $1,000, that's a pretty decent amount. That is pretty much right here where we're, let's see, what did I not include? Dumpster rental, sign updates, no new signs. So that's where our budget stands now, and it is to be determined when we would actually be awarded the $1,000 or receive a decision either way. any questions or discussion before I move on to the next thing?
Laura, do you know when that next step will be taken from like timeline wise? Okay.
No, I don't, but the select board typically meets once every 2 weeks.
Mhm.
And I have not followed up, but I will make a note to myself. Do that. Follow up. Okay, follow up with select board. All right. So let me, do you have any questions on this? I think that I supplied you with a copy of it earlier. The
You
one
did.
thing,
Yep.
one thing I will mention is that on this high end, or both of these high, well, don't do that. On both of these high end lines, it does not include updating our current signs,
Mhm.
which I think if we had to focus money anywhere, it would be on updating current signs as well as purchasing new signs,
Mhm.
because the current signs are still useful. And as we found out, you can tear off stickers and put on new stickers many, many times on these signs.
Right.
So as long as we have them, I would say I would like to continue using them.
Laura, just as a side note, I know you communicated to the committee about any signs that are still outstanding. I do have my, I believe it was 7 or 8 signs. I do have those signs. I just haven't given them back to you yet. So now your number of MIA signs should be maybe 19 instead of 26.
Okay, that's better.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know that some of them, we had some high winds and some of them just got blown to Kingdom Come.
2
And
of them are
others
damaged. The
just
signs are okay, but the stakes were damaged. So I do have 2 that are damaged.
well, the stakes are okay because those are a lot less expensive to replace.
Yeah.
The signs are over $4. Let's see, like $4.34 a piece.
Yeah.
So that adds up.
Yeah.
Let's see.
Oh, I also have the sign up sheet. We did get a couple new email addresses, so I have that for you as
Good.
well. I didn't want to leave it in the garage when I dropped off the rest of the stuff.
That makes sense. Another thing that came up from the meeting was there was a lot of debate as to whether Keep Hubbardston Beautiful should be funded by fundraising or by a line item in the budget. And I think I've said to this body before, I don't like fundraising for 2 reasons. One, I don't like asking for money. And 2, I don't like asking for money from the same pool of business owners in this small town. And during my defense of not fundraising, Kellyanne, I'm going to mess up her last name, Jacoboni, was in the meeting on some different business. And she corroborated that she's besieged by requests for funding. And she gives a lot. She's a very generous person. But she did point out that she is a person that people approach time after time for funding.
I think it's worth just consideration that, there's kind of a do we want to, as a town, as a community, put our our efforts behind this from the town standpoint versus putting that on local businesses? Like, who should support this? Is it local businesses, or is it the town itself that should step up and say, this is important to us and we want to make sure that this is an event and a cleanup that can keep happening? So that's how I thought about it too.
Yeah, and I think that if other people would join during those select board meetings and put forth that opinion, that it would be more helpful than just hearing me talk about it, because that's a point I have made again and again. And it is, I believe strongly that it is something the town should fund. Something that would be beneficial for the argument is to poll other towns to find out if they are in fact doing all their own fundraising or if they are being funded.
I thought of that. I was in Leominster, I must have been last weekend, and I saw one of their marquee signs for their cleanup day. And I thought, gee, I wonder how they fund it. So definitely some homework worth doing if we can get the committee members to maybe, take a couple towns and call around and see if we
Yeah.
can find any useful information.
Yep. And another thing that came out of the meeting was if the committee needs or wants more money because they have or would like to make more expenses, there was a question as to whether a town committee can also fundraise. Because we are affiliated with Keep Massachusetts Beautiful, then that might make the committee under the umbrella organization of Keep Massachusetts Beautiful and enable us to do fundraising. But it might be a conflict of interest to be both receiving money from the town and getting outside funding. So again, that's another thing that we will need to look at for the future. I think that's we'll cross that bridge when we come to its situation after we find out the status of the $1,000 a year. Okay, so the next thing is results and lessons learned. Now, this is something I learned how to do recently, and have you ever been to a lessons learned meeting?
I have.
Yes, I hadn't because I have been freelancing up until recently, so I had never heard of it. But for viewers who are watching, a lessons learned meeting, I've also heard it referred to as a post-mortem. And what it is a recap of an event or an experience that you had, and you go through it and see what you learned, what went well, what went poorly, or what could be worked on to improve it for the next time. So if we could talk about some of the things that happen, I'll say sign. Something I have, late dumpster. There is something that Mrs. Young, Katie Young, the select board member, brought up. She said that somebody refused her service. I'll talk about that more when we get to that one. Are there anything that happened that you would like to talk about?
Just kind of recollecting the day. I can't think of any other outstanding issues. I would say you've got them covered here. Other than these items that we can debrief on now, I think other than these, it went pretty smoothly. We had enough volunteers to cover the booth. We definitely had participants come and go throughout the morning. Actually, I do have one other item, and that is the start time. It did come up. I don't remember which other volunteer, but it did come up, I think, 2 different times in the day, how quiet it was for maybe the first hour or even 2. And so there was some question about, should we consider the start time and maybe being a little bit later. I didn't keep track like a tally or anything, but it did definitely pick up in the afternoon. I would say before 10 o'clock, I could probably count the booth interactions under maybe 10, just for a gauge.
I'm trying to remember what it was like before in past years. And I remember there usually was a flurry of activity for people gathering their supplies. And then it was crickets for a little while. And then maybe an hour, 2 hours in, then people would start bringing things back.
Okay. It was a little bit different this year then, where it was definitely much, much quieter. And I think the overall volume of traffic and participation was a little bit lower than last year. But having only been there this year and last year, that's my only point of reference. So I would hesitate to make a full, to say that was definitive. I think another experience that is a positive lesson learned is the kind of the synergy that happens having the bottle drive, having all 3 parts of the day happen all at the same time. I did talk to the Boy Scout troop about, how their day was going, and that came up of, it's really nice that we're all here. And so people can, even if they didn't do one thing this year, now they know. So it was good, positive synergy that all 3 of those things are happening at the same time, as opposed to different days, different times. So that was a good one.
Was there any, did people tend to clean up the rec field, or were they asking for direction?
I did have a couple people ask, is there a map? Is there an assignment, a particular street? And I used your guidance to say, you're welcome to start here at the rec field. We did end up asking people, if they were going off to a certain street, what street they thought they would do. So that the next time somebody asked, we could say, well, we think there's somebody on, New Templeton Road and New Princeton Road. I think those were the ones. But that was maybe 2 or 3 instances out of the whole day. So that was fine. I don't know how thoroughly the rec field got cleaned up this year. I know a couple of our own committee volunteers went and did some. And then I believe actually some of the Boy Scouts, when they had a little bit of downtime, went and cleaned up a little bit as well. Most of the town, residents that came seemed to typically go back to like their own street or something like that and do cleanup there.
Yeah, and that was the original intent. I thought that people would just go out to wherever they were familiar and clean up there.
Yep, that seems to be the case.
Okay, but this seems like a nice list. Well, we start at the top. Lessons learned. I learned that I need to keep better track of the people who took the signs. So I had a map, so that was nice. It's in visual aid here. So I did have a map. Now it's blurred. There. I had a map that told where people were, which streets people were posting on, and everybody had 7 signs, but that's as far as my organization went. I did have some really lame organization here where people were signing up and putting maybe a phone number if they remember to do so, but I could have done a much better job of doing that. So that'd be my recommendation, is make a form, very simple to do that. And along with a street map, that way people would know, or the organizer would know how many signs went out, who put them out, and who brought them back. I also, let's see, noticed that a lot of signs were still there a week after. And I would like to, one of the
Yeah, I'm not sure if
recommendations-
maybe it wasn't clear to the volunteers that put the signs out that they were then also, being asked to recollect them. I'm not sure that was clear.
All right. Does that seem to cover that for you?
Yes, I think so.
Okay. So late dumpster was 3 hours late, right?
Correct. Yeah, I called, I think the first time, maybe around 8, definitely before 8:30. And I left a message. I didn't actually get somebody on the phone that first time. So I left a message. The gentleman, Justin did call back and said he was emptying a dumpster, I think is what he said. He had to empty one before he could deliver it, and that it would be there, in the next hour. When that hour had passed, I called back. I think that time I got him on the phone, but I might have actually left a message both times. And then that time he said he was actually going to pick one up, like from another customer, and then would bring that. And I think he said like another period of time. When that period of time had passed, I reached out again, and actually as I was doing that, it arrived. So that was the third time. So yeah, it was about 10:30. It was a little bit after 10:30, if I remember correctly. We had a pretty good pile of trash going by that point in time. So we had to take a little while and take all the trash that was just kind of in a pile and get it into the dumpster.
I would say that the big lesson is that if you don't pay,
Yeah.
if you don't become a paying customer, then you are working, he's trying to get you the thing that you wanted, but you're not a priority.
Yeah, he
And
did
that's-
say specifically that he had a lot of other townwide cleanups that day.
Yeah, and that's very understandable.
Yeah.
But what do you think we can do to prevent that from happening? One thing
Well, we could certainly pay.
well, we could pay, but that of course would set a precedent of paying in the future.
Right.
And that's something certainly that the select board is hoping to avoid.
Right. I mean, maybe that, a call the day before to check in and see if there's any issues, if the dumpster is, good to go, that kind of thing.
I know that he had your phone number from before, but it wouldn't hurt to do a check-in.
Yep.
Anything else? With this vendor, it wasn't an issue of he didn't know where it was. I know that we have
No.
with the recycling crew, that was a problem one year.
Oh, gotcha.
Okay. Okay, anything else on that?
I don't think so. I'm not sure what other options there are.
Well, can certainly find another vendor. That could be an option.
Yep. Yep.
But you'd only be able to commit to one at a time. You couldn't have two and see which one arrived first. That would be
Right,
unfair
yeah.
for everybody.
Yeah.
All right. So this can certainly be something that we bring up with Dustin Whitaker from Pleasant View Trash Removal, Waste Disposal, to find out if there was something we could have done differently.
Right.
All right, now this next one is something Katie told me. Katie Young is a troop leader, Girl Scout troop leader. And unfortunately, when people donate bottles and cans to the Girl Scouts, they are not always very clean. Sometimes they're just downright rotten to the point that the adults are the only ones who can handle them because there's broken bottles and cigarette butts and just garbage mixed in. Apparently what happened was the collection were set aside things like food containers, plastic things that weren't deposit bottles and cans. And they were in a big bag and cardboard. And Katie brought them over to Keep Hubbardston Beautiful table to throw them out. And one of the event staff said, no, that stuff's recyclable. You need to take it home. And there was a disagreement where Katie didn't want to take it home because she was tired and it was all bagged up and it was just an added thing for her to do on top of her day. And the Keep Hubbardston Beautiful person was trying to keep in the spirit of recycling and say, well, this is something that we should be doing and not just throwing things in the garbage. The upshot was that the Keep Hubbardston Beautiful event staffer took the waste back with her to recycle on her own. So let's see, lessons learned. Well, there are a couple of things.
So I was that volunteer. That was me.
Oh, okay.
So the trash was not an issue. It went into the dumpster without any issue. So nobody was refused service. But it was me that said the 8 boxes of clean folded cardboard should not go in the dumpster. And I questioned why it was being, brought over to us because it was recyclable. So that was how that happened. And the conversation was, she said, well, we do bottles. We have a place for bottles. The Boy Scouts do e-waste. They have a place for e-waste. You have a dumpster, so it goes in the dumpster. And I just said, well, it's recyclable. And that was pretty much the end of the conversation. And I said, well, we'll just need to deal with this differently next year. And then, yes, we set the 8 boxes of clean folded cardboard aside. We did not put it in the dumpster. The bags of trash went into the dumpster without issue. And we split the boxes between 3 of the committee members and took it home and recycled it ourselves so that it was not put in the landfill. I did ask the driver, because this happened before the dumpster showed up. So I did ask the driver if we could give them the cardboard, what would happen. And he said it would go in the trash and it would not be recycled. So I asked, out of not knowing, why the bottle drive didn't have a responsible plan for the cardboard.
Okay, I think that in the past, I can't remember if I took home some, because I remember that being a question I had, but it's been a long time since I volunteered for that, so I don't know. So that is certainly something that we might consider if there is a vendor who can collect recycle.
I asked the driver when he arrived, if they had separate dumpsters for recycling. He said that they did. He even went as far as to call the supervisor or what have you and ask if they had any that day, which was obviously, a shot in the dark, and they didn't, but that was totally fine. It was good information to have. So it is a possibility to ask for a separate dumpster for recycling. I think for me, that was the big takeaway, that we have this day where we're, it's all about being green. It's about cleaning up. It's about recycling. And then to not have the ability to actually recycle anything that isn't a bottle, an e-waste, to me seems like a lost opportunity to make it an even more valuable event for the community. So the lesson learned is definitely we might want to be able to address other recyclable items that people find. I had another gentleman who separated the trash that he collected on the side of the road. He actually took the time to separate out the recyclables from the trash and just gave us the trash. So it was, in that regard, I think there's opportunity there.
All right. Anything else you'd like to add or elaborate on?
Just the budget implications of a separate dumpster. I think just in terms of, when that comes back up from our budget standpoint, obviously a second dumpster is an additional ask, either in terms of a donation or, of course, if it was something we were paying for.
All right. Okay, start time. This is another one of those institutional knowledge thing where all 3 events have happened from 8 o'clock on for so long that I don't know about. Well, I shouldn't say I don't know if we can change it.
Mhm.
I know that the bottle and can drive, I was going to say that that time is set in stone, but it really isn't, because their container truck comes the night before and
Right, I
they usually
noticed
pick it
that.
up on Sunday. So there really is no good reason other than we've always done it this way, which is the worst reason that we could change it.
This year felt a little less attended, generally speaking, so I think it might be worth our while to keep things as they are for at least another year and see if we can make some additional observations about time. And then maybe make a decision based on a little bit more information. But I did notice that it was definitely really quiet. You know, like I said, just a small handful of people that first hour to 2 hours. But it was generally quieter this year altogether. So I'm not sure we should react to that right away.
Okay, let me look up our website, because I just put 1.5 ton, 1 to 1.5 tons, because I couldn't remember. But I've been keeping track over the years.
Mhm. Yeah, we only filled just short of half the dumpster this past year.
Yeah. Okay, so that is actually the lowest it has been.
Yep.
And last year was the highest it had been. And I would imagine it was the highest last year because people could not wait to get out of their houses. But
Yeah.
why it was so low this year, it could be any number of reasons. It could be a marketing problem. It could be people were busy doing other things.
The weather wasn't great. It wasn't horrible, but there was definitely rain in the forecast. It did hold off, so it didn't rain in the morning, but it rained very shortly after noon. So maybe people were hedging their bets a little bit with the weather. Yeah, it's hard to say.
I know that I did not do nearly as much online marketing as I had because I just didn't have the time anymore.
Yeah, I'm sure that's a factor as well. We were very lucky to have your time and effort those previous years. Also, when we were at the event, some of the committee members and volunteers, we did brainstorm a list of, which I also have with the email signups to give you, a list of future communication and marketing and promotion ideas. So we do have a list of those to provide for future discussion as well.
Okay.
I'll type them up. They're handwritten, so I'll type them up and email that to you so you can disperse it amongst the volunteers and members.
Okay. And one of the ideas I had was to get a banner that stretches across Main Street like the Lions Club. And Katie told me that the redesigned Main Street will not have the capacity to have a banner going across the street.
Oh, that's a bummer.
Yep.
That's a really great, very visible way that I think a lot of people learn about things in town. I know I do.
Oh yeah,
Anyway,
you can't
sign
help
is
but see
another.
it when you're driving under it.
Yeah. That and the e-sign in the parking lot. So in the rec field parking lot is another good way.
Was that on? Because I had
It was.
submitted. Okay, good, because I'd
Yep,
submitted
it
that.
was.
Yay. Yeah, for those of you who are watching this meeting who don't know, I was unable to attend the event because I was out of town. So I was helping with the buildup and the publicity for it. And then during the event, Sarah took over as the lead coordinator for the townwide cleanup. All right, so is that it for that line?
I think so. Yeah, it was a noticeable difference in participation, though.
Community volunteers.
Yep.
Yeah, and also another thing that I didn't do because I just forgot to do it was I didn't put any flyers up. And usually the flyers, it's not like I plaster everything. It's the places where people go. I think I put a couple at the elementary school usually. All of the businesses in the downtown area, not Mr. Mike's, the Citgo convenience
Mhm.
store, the hairdresser, Hub Market, but I didn't do that this year. So I think that was pretty low hanging fruit that I should have gone for, that I would like to see done next year.
Mhm. Yeah, that's a good kind of litmus test of how effective the flyers may have been.
Right. Yeah, and I know, actually, now that I'm thinking about it, there was usually a flyer that went home with the students.
Mhm.
That did not happen.
I think that's on our brainstorm list as well. Yeah.
Another thing that Keep Massachusetts Beautiful likes to tell people is that you can have an event at an elementary school to get the kids all hyped up about it. And then they send home things to go with a flyer that the kids will talk about with their mom and dad,
Mhm.
so that they get the kids excited, which is really a good thing because we want little kids to learn how to pick
Right.
stuff up and throw stuff away.
Yeah. And the high school too, because the high school Quabbin has a graduation requirement for volunteer hours. So it would be an attractive way to do some volunteer hours for Quabbin high school students as well. And the high school does have an environmental club. I don't remember the exact name, but it's like an environmental, like a green type club.
Okay. Well, now we know marketing works.
Who knew?
Okay, so we like having the three things going on together.
Yeah. Lesson learned is that is a good, it has a good kind of economy of scale. It just, if somebody's there for one thing, they get exposed to the other two. Yeah, keep doing this, exactly. And again, it just points to the town's commitment, right? We have a lot of different ways that we're supporting this.
In another row. There we go. One thing that I had tried in 2019 was I had wanted to have an electric vehicle show at the same time as this event, because it naturally seemed to fit.
Mhm.
And at the time, the town administrator was, he liked the idea a lot, but he was also looking at it from a liability standpoint.
Mhm.
And he was spooked to think that there would be a row of cars that people could look at, but would also drive people out on tours.
Oh, okay.
There's actually, I can't remember the name of the group, but Henry and I, my son Henry and I went to an electric vehicle show at Hebert's Candy Mansion in Shrewsbury a couple of years ago. And they had 10, 20 cars that people brought, private cars that they brought to park all over the park, all over the lawn. And the public were invited to talk to the car owners about
Mhm.
what the cars were like. And a lot of the car owners were giving people rides. So I don't know if we had to sign any kind of a liability waiver, but I do remember it was fun as heck and I really
Mm.
wanted to do it again, but it
I
just didn't
think,
work out.
yeah, I think adding other components generally is a great idea, given, maybe the parking lot, but there's all the fields. Is there some other, other aligned or affinity groups that could have other booths, for, tree planting or the land trusts or something like that. So I think that just again, to build on a one-stop shop and to, say this is something that's really important here in Hubbardston, any other components that we could work with other partners and add would be a great, thing for expansion in the future.
That, yeah, I agree. And that certainly is one of the reasons why I wanted to involve other people, because although I love this idea, this becomes a full-time job when you're coordinating all this stuff.
Mhm.
And I told Katie, I don't know how she does it. I don't know how she coordinates these big, big events, but maybe there's an opportunity to work with her because she's really good at it. And by that time, she will have simmered down. Okay, anything else on that one?
I don't think so.
Okay. So a couple people asking where they could go and what they could pick up. And that's happened before.
Mhm.
And it's always been too much. It seemed like if I divided the town into a grid, that some things would get put, some things people would choose other grid spots and then leave
Mhm.
some open. It just didn't seem to make any sense for a town of this size
Yeah.
to grid it out like that.
I think that the couple people that asked, it was very manageable, and it actually gave us an opportunity to have a little bit longer conversation with those particular people. So I don't think this is, something that we need to address per se. I think if we tried to, like you were saying, Laura, if we tried to kind of do anything about it and put more structure around it, we'd be over engineering.
So people cleaned up the rec field, which was Sanda, Barry had asked specifically if there was any way that we could get people to clean up the rec
Mhm.
field. I said, I know a way, we'll just ask them to.
Yep, we definitely had a couple volunteers, or committee members, I should say, that we would take turns, kind of stepping away from the booth for a moment, and we had some go clean up the rec field. And then I know the Boy Scout troop had a little bit of downtime and a lot of energy, so they definitely took buckets and helped as well. So I don't know how thoroughly, but it definitely did get some attention. And I think we can just continue with that practice. You know, when people ask kind of with the item above, you know, is there somewhere in particular, we can always say, you're welcome to start here. So yeah, I think that goes hand in hand.
Did you happen to notice while you were doing that, if the trash collection, the trash containers at the rec field were filled to the point where you couldn't put anything in, or was it just that people are being sloppy and leaving stuff?
Oh, I don't know. I did not I didn't step away from the booth actually, so I don't know. We can definitely put that on our list to check next year, though. I know Katie mentioned that the bottle drive, you know, that yellow bin, we're at the far end. She said that
Oh, the
was
Cub
full.
Scout one?
Yeah, she said that one was full.
Oh, the yellow dumpster.
Yeah, you know, the one that's just for bottles, that's kind of there all the time, way down by
Oh,
the
that
skate
is,
park.
yeah, that was the one I was thinking of first. Yeah, they the Cub Scout pack made that so that they would have a revenue stream, but then the pack hasn't been doing very well and nobody's been collecting the stuff. So
Yeah.
it's up to whoever is there to collect it.
Yep.
Okay. Well, I think that's a pretty hefty
That's
document
good.
that we can use for later. Well, that is all the business that I had to go over. We went 20 minutes over. Sorry, I usually try to tighten this up, but I hope you weren't being pulled away from something more fascinating.
Well, thank
All
you for
right,
all of your years of hard work and service to the town on this, Laura.
you're welcome. Yeah, one thing I would like to close the meeting with is that we are looking for volunteers, and I did have somebody who said earlier on that she was interested in the chair position, so I need to follow up with that. I'll put that on my list. Follow up chair. If I don't write it down, it doesn't get done. It's the way of the world. But apart from the chair who would lead the efforts of the team, we are looking for more people to join the committee. Because as you might have gotten from our conversation, this doesn't happen if only 2 people are running it. It's just not going to happen. So the more people who are helping out with the foundational planning and the marketing ahead of the event, and also the people who are at the event helping out, the more successful it'll be, and the more trash will pick up, which is the big goal. All right, so if that is that, any last words?
No, I think we covered it.
Hey, well then, good night, Hubbardston.